can start. So thanks a lot. Good afternoon and welcome to this session on stakeholders engagement and co-creation. I am Germana Gianquinto, hosting this session, and I am senior consultant for the AI for Public Policy project. I hope you will enjoy this track in which we will focus on co-creation policies. Just a couple of words from my side, and I leave the floor to the speakers. In the meantime, I will check, okay, so everything is okay with the presentation. Co-creation policies are meant to be implemented together with stakeholders at different levels. Imagine the impact at the light of the era we are living in, when the existence of digital technology and the large amount of information and data are available, but need to be better addressed to allow a real and effective evidence-based policy. We live in a digital world where shopping, working, and even meeting our friends and partners are online activities. And despite the wealth of digital tools at our fingertips, participation in democratic processes is falling across Europe. This may be because so far governments have just digitized what we were used to do offline. For example, petition and consultation that were not electronic, while new technologies and data opens up more exciting possibilities for collaboration, co-creation, and consultation with citizens. All the projects that are under focus today evaluate the impact of co-creation, and this track in particular explores how new technologies and tools can be used for engagement and innovative collaboration between policymakers and citizens, creating a whole ecosystem for a positive change. We will talk in particular about the experience of 3 projects, DECIDO, Duet, and Intelcom. Our valuable speaker in these tracks are Mr. Fabio Perossini, reporting to us about the hackathon experience within the city of Turin communities, Mr. Pavel Kogut, telling us about the implementation of digital twin within the public administration, and Mr. Jerónimo Arena Garcia on up-to-date on science, technology, and innovation policies within a co-design framework with stakeholders and by the means of the Intelcom platform. I would like to present the first speaker, Mr. Fabio Perossini, while you set your presentation on the computer. So giving you a few minutes. Mr. Fabio Perossini from the DECIDO project is a K-People Research Foundation founder and director, as well as for K-People Limited. Fabio has more than 30 years experience as international program manager. He has developed a deep experience in the management of big programs in the field of emergency management, cultural heritage, innovation in public administration, and social innovation. He has also matured a 20-year experience in managing social initiatives, being a pioneer in implementing horizontal subsidiary initiatives within municipalities and local institutions in general. Fabio, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me in this event. I'm very proud to be part of the team. I would like to talk about the experience of the DECIDO project in Turin. The DECIDO project is started in the month of March 2021, so we have not yet a big experience, but we are really in the phase of engagement. So this particular team and track of this event is very, very important for us. So how the city of Turin communities are approaching this event-based policy improvement. First of all, we have to say that in the project decided in Turin, although in the proposal and in the Annex 1, it was planned to have only one scenario, we decided to put in place 4 different scenarios, mainly because we are really interested to understand how co-creation and evidence-based policies could be approached in a different situation, because it is not so clear if a unique way to approach all the type of co-creation is enough. So for this reason, we decided to approach 4 scenarios in 2 separated areas. One, emergencies mainly linked to floods, because this is the main emergency in the Turin area. And in this framework, we are addressing two policy. The first one is related to a residential area in the north of Turin on the Po River, where we are addressing citizens living in the area. The second is relating to the Turin downtown area, where we have the two border of the river, the left and the right, which have different, let's say, category of inhabitants. From one side, we have a business initiative like restaurants, bars. On the other part, we have the sport circles for let's say for a lot of sport activity on the water. The second big area is the COVID-19 area. So in Turin, we had a very good experience during the COVID-19 because there was a self-organized reaction from citizens, and this reaction was really very wide. So in this wide experience, we decided to try to capitalize 2 of them in order to design new policies that could help a structural addressing of those kind of emergency. The first one is the young adults in difficulties. We experience that the main issue during the pandemic and also today, because now we are in a way back to the emergency, is the impact for young adults starting from 15 years old up to 25. And the second area is the disadvantaged people support. When talking about disadvantaged people, we talk about elderly people, people with disability, cultural disadvantage, so any kind of disadvantage. So what we identify as expectation for them, for most of them, it is very important to improve the communication with first responder when dealing with floods, because nowadays the communication is very pure, very straight, but it doesn't give the right perception from the user point of view. Then to coordinate the post-hazard, I don't want to go through everything, but we did a very detailed analysis of what is needed from them, with the main objective to guarantee the citizens' resilience. Well, the 3 pillars that are characterizing the Turin pilot is, the first one is exactly what we are addressing in this speech, is the citizen engagement. The second one is the policy life cycle, and the third one is the use of EOSC services. Well, to to go through the policy co-creation, the first activity that we think are mandatory is to go in field and to check and to understand how the policy are working, how the policy co-creation could work, and which are the steps that we have to follow. And this is the outcome of the exercise done with the social services and the association in Turin, in order to understand, for instance, what is needed in terms of policy co-creation at social services level. As you can see, we separated three areas. The middle one is where the DECIDO platform will provide the services. And there are two areas that will interact with that. From one side, we have the administration, the public administration, and on the other side, we have the co-creation group. On the right hand, you can see a legend for the 4 phases of the policy life cycle: agenda setting, formulation, implementation, and evaluation. We have to be very clear that when we talk about implementation, in our project, we don't have the power to do the real implementation, because the real implementation involves a decision from the administration and often also financial support for the implementation of the policy. But we are addressing a simulation of the implementation. And this is something that will go directly to what we discussed yesterday about digital twin and about the need for simulation. We are going to use serious gaming to do that. And the hackathon Germana was presenting before is exactly what we plan to do on January the 27th. Probably we will also provide the broadcasting of the experience, but the idea is to involve 3 groups of 4 volunteers to run this hackathon in 3 separated groups, and then to collect the outcome. This will be the first experiment for us to check if the work done is going in the right direction. Well, what we learn by now in very few months? First of all, that there is a big difference between data availability. I listen a lot of speech talking about data during this event, but we have to bear in mind that there is a big difference between data availability versus their usability. What we learned in this early stage of the project is that often we have data, but they're not usable. It's not so easy to collect them for citizens, for the co-creation team. Let's consider that the viewpoint is the co-creation team. So we have to, let's say, one of the challenge is really to make them usable through a very easy interface. Otherwise, they are usable only for, let's say, professionals. And this is not the case to run a co-creation session. The second point is a listening capability. I am criticizing myself because in the past, we often present ourselves to the pilot site and to citizens as, let's say, professor. It's not the case. If we want really to go with them, we have to open our ear and listen what they want in the way they are describing. Do not force them do something that they are not used to do. The third point is a consequence, is fluidity. So this concept is something very new for us. And so means that we have to not to go at the table with a structure way to approach the issue without the needed flexibility, and also a sort of, let's say, continuous changing approach. For this reason, I call that fluidity, because it's not only to adapt our attitude, but it's really to keep fluid the process. So do not force the process into a direction that probably could be gain advantage if keep fluid. The fourth point is that trust. If we want to receive the engagement level that we need to be present. We need to be present. The project team should stay in touch with citizens. We cannot organize one meeting and then disappear for 2 months and then call for another meeting. This is not working, and we have to find a way to keep this relationship open during all the project life cycle. Well, I heard before talking about cultural challenges. I keep my last slide to really to try to focus what we have in mind in terms of cultural challenge. We are talking about capacity building. Capacity building is a pillar. I fully agree with what was said yesterday about capacity building. But how we are going to do this capacity building? I think traditional training is not working. I think we have to use a role-play training or a serious gaming. And the policy implementation situation is an opportunity. So I think we should create events and opportunity like the hackathon that we are organizing in Turin in order to test this serious gaming. For sure, the first hackathon will not be supported by technology, will be made using, let's say, very few technology, but it is important to understand how to talk with citizens. And it is important that the concept of digital twin that we discussed yesterday, I think this is an opportunity, but I would like to know what it means, because it's a wide concept, very challenging, very fashion, but I would like to understand what it means. The main point when talking about stakeholder engagement is rewarding. So how we are going to reward citizens engaged in our process? Take into consideration that we are talking about citizens who are spending their time to help the community. So if there is in the area a mechanism for it that is stressing and in a way rewarding the civil sense, this is good. So we can count on that for the engagement of citizens. Otherwise, we have to address this point. We have to understand what could be useful to achieve that engagement. The other point is the association versus civic volunteers. There is a border. Is there a border? How big it is? How they can exchange? In DECIDO, we have involved a Volto, who is an association, but is in a way is a second-level association, so is quite an agency managing association. So the idea is to understand with them where and how we can involve both category of volunteers in the work we have done. The last point is something very, very challenging, and in view also of new project. What is the relation between policies and commons? We are following in the project, in the DECIDO project, we experience the fact that often when talking about policies, we are talking about commons. So the point is, okay, there is a relationship between the two. It's very, let's say, it's more motivating to involve citizens if they are discussing policy about commons. So it is important to understand the role that co-creation could have in this case. And the co-creation in our mind could be seen as a democratic innovation. And this is very important because it opens the door to further research in the area of social innovation. And this is exactly the work we are doing in K-People Research Foundation. So I finish my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Fabio. Thanks a lot. I think your presentation raised, at least from my side, a couple of points which are very interesting. For example, the fact that you talked about the impact of COVID-19. Exactly the area we are living in with the pandemic acting and impacting the co-creation policies and I mean how the public administration and the services set in place for citizens can be assessed in an effective and fast way. And then, for example, it is particularly interesting the fact that you took in your research the area of disadvantage at different levels, so economical, physical, whatsoever. That I mean, I think it's really a valuable and important aspect to be taken care of. And I mean, also the thing you said about the data availability. I mean, we are talking about the infrastructure. So we have the cloud, the European cloud available, the US and the infrastructure set to collect and receive all data. But I mean, a reflection, it seems to me, is needed on what type of data, because we have a lot of data, part of them are not usable or are not precise. So I think in the last month, in the last time ahead, we should focus on this type of data and how to implement the possibility to have effective data, more effective data. So thank you again for your presentation. I would like now to present Mr. Pavel Kogut. Pavel is a senior researcher working across an extensive portfolio of digital projects, from helping cities make more effective policy through local digital twins to supporting rural areas with foresight for better long-term strategic planning. Pavel, would you like to share your presentation in the meantime? Thanks a lot, so we can have everything set. Recently, I would like to underline that Pavel developed an online course to help people across the public sector to make better policies through data and visualization. So I think his presentation will focus on that and give us an overview of the collaborative governance and how to implement the actions on this topic. Please, Pavel, I leave you the floor.
Thanks, Germana, for the introduction, and I hope you can hear me well, you can see me, and also my slides.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
So, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's a very interesting topic to discuss, and my pleasure to be with you all here today. And the topic of co-creation and collaborative governance, I would like to approach it from what I think is an interesting perspective, the perspective of local digital twins, and the extent to which they can contribute to collaborative governance. As you'll find out toward the end of my presentation, not all digital twins do contribute to collaborative governance, and it depends on the type of digital twin that a city has. And an important focus of my presentation today will be the typology of local digital twins that we developed here at the Duet project, which is a Horizon 2020 project that is entering its final year now. So let me start now with the reason why we're using the term local digital twins. There are lots of similar terms flying around, but in our project, and certainly in this presentation, I want to be consistent with the European Commission's definition, which it coined recently. So the local digital twin basically refers to digital twins of smart cities. And local digital twins are digital representations of physical assets, processes, and systems operating at urban scale. And these processes, assets, and systems through a digital twin, they can be monitored, they can be interrogated, simulated, controlled, and fine-tuned either by a human operator or an AI. So when we talk of local digital twins, we synonymously refer to all the different definitions that are available out there. And we mean digital twins of cities. Now, with this clarified, let me also answer another question: why we decided to create the local digital twin typology. The term digital twins and the concept itself is very old. It was first introduced by NASA, and in the early 2000s, it entered the manufacturing community. And then I think in the period around 2010, 2015, it gradually established a foothold in the smart city domain. And now we have really in excess of 20 local digital twin initiatives across Europe. These are the ones that I could think of the top of my head when I was preparing the presentation, but I think the actual number is much higher. Some of these are European projects, other city-led initiatives. Some have already been released, others are at the early stage of development. And this field is getting crowded very quickly. And that's why we need a typology to make sense of the different type of digital twins that emerge, that have already emerged and are about to emerge. So that's the main reason why we need a typology. And this typology can be useful for capturing the variety of digital twins that are available now, or which may emerge in the future. And it can help us understand the commonalities and similarities between the digital twins, but also some of the unique features that make them special. And some of the digital twins, the different types that we develop, they can serve as maturity models. So we can understand how certain digital twins can progress from one model to another, and what would be the requirements for this progression. So for all these reasons, we decided to create a typology. And before I go into details about the typology, let's take a step back and try and understand why local digital twins are so popular. You know, there are probably around 30 initiatives in Europe alone, but if we count all the local digital twin initiatives around the world, we will have certainly in excess of 50, if not more. So why are cities opting for local digital twins? Well, what's clear is that in this day and age, we need data-driven tools to address urban challenges. And interestingly, local digital twins, they do share a lot of similarities when it comes to benefits with other smart city systems, for example, geospatial information system, building information modeling, and IoT dashboards. So with local digital twins, you can also get some contextual information on physical assets, for example, contextual information on buildings, how much energy they consume. You can monitor trends in traffic, in air pollution, in noise pollution, and also with digital twins, just like with other systems, you can make some improvements and optimizations, for example, with regards to traffic. So all these benefits are similar, but in our opinion, there are certain benefits that make digital twins special and unique. And these are first of all, the fact that digital twins they facilitate horizontal integration and reuse of assets and processes. So take, for example, an intersection or a crossroads. In IoT deployments, you often have this siloed solutions that don't facilitate reuse. But in a digital twin, you have an intersection that can be used for traffic monitoring and control. You can also use the same intersection, for example, to detect traffic violations near pedestrian crossings or to detect drivers who run a red light. And then the same intersection in a digital twin can also be used, for example, to develop applications for autonomous navigation for self-driving cars. So you can see how we're moving with the digital twin from a very narrow, vertically integrated solution to one that is horizontal and that facilitates the use of assets, processes, and systems in a much wider way. The second benefit of local digital twins is the fact that they allow policymakers to experiment different measures before implementing them on the ground. And some processes are so mission critical that you simply can't switch them off without incurring tremendous damage. And some processes in city centers are so vital to our livelihoods that it's not possible to suspend them without causing severe disruptions and public outcry. And, take, for example, a fleet of autonomous vehicles. You wouldn't be able probably to test them in a busy city like Paris during rush hour. But with the digital twin, provided that you have enough accurate information, enough computing power, and enough analytics capabilities, you would be able to test a fleet of autonomous vehicles in a busy center without causing much disruption. So digital twins in that sense make the testing on fleet autonomous vehicles a mission possible. And finally, local digital twins, the third benefit is their ability to make public services more citizen-centric. They allow citizens and other local stakeholders to experience public services better and faster. And what you see here, for example, is the digital twin of Rotterdam. And what they have there is a visualization of a planning application. And citizens who maybe live in the affected area or in adjacent streets, they're able to submit their concerns, their comments, their suggestions for improvement as to why this, for example, new building is a good idea, why it shouldn't be there. So it does make policy decisions closer to citizens, and it basically minimizes the time that it takes for citizens to interact with local authorities. So now that we've got the benefits of digital twins covered, let's go back to the local digital twin typology that we developed. And we used a network-centric approach to developing our typology because of the multitude of interactions that are happening in smart cities, horizontally and vertically between industries, sectors, and across stakeholders. So we thought it was fitting to use a network-centric approach to the study of digital twins of smart cities. And the network-centric approach allows us to examine how value is co-created in a smart city, which to a large extent determined by the interaction of different actors that belong to a network. And this leads to several exploitation scenarios that vary according to usage and control. And we mapped usage parameters along the y-axis, control parameters along the x-axis. And with regards to usage, the model goes from a closed one, where government is the sole user and beneficiary, to one that is open to the ecosystem. And with regards to control, because smart cities are essentially large data ecosystems, you have control over data resources and technical infrastructure that is very centralized and managed by the government, to one that is diffused and decentralized and managed by the ecosystem. And so all this mapping led to the creation of 4 local digital twin types, starting with the closed one at the bottom left corner, Then the one above it is a network-oriented local digital twin. Moving on to the right is a network-owned digital twin that is represented by the highest level of diffusion and openness. And then concluding the typology and sitting in the bottom right corner is a network-enabled digital twin. So then in the next few slides, I will talk about these types in a little bit more detail. So a closed local digital twin, as the name suggests, it basically serves as an internal decision support tool for the government. It's not open for the ecosystem. It's the government basically that initiates the digital twin project. It's the government who manages, pays for the digital twin project, and sets conditions for data access and sharing. And most of the data in this digital twin is governmental data, but some data can be purchased from private providers. And the typical use cases in this kind of digital twin are policy related, such as urban planning. And an example that you can see on your right is the Vienna's GeoTwin. It's a closed local digital twin used mostly by local officials. It was set up for two reasons. They wanted to integrate different data sources across multiple government departments, mobility data, transport data, census data, and connect all these data sources into the city information model. And then also to support, with the help of this information model, specific planning decisions in the construction of the Northwest train station, for example. So that's a closed local digital twin. A step up from this is the network-oriented local digital twin. This is a project that is typically initiated by the government, but at some point they make this digital twin open to the ecosystem in order to facilitate open innovation. So although government is the initiator, it's not the sole user and it's not the sole beneficiary, because you have citizens, private sector stakeholders who are also using it to, for example, create new services. And with a network-oriented local digital twin, it's interesting because commercial reuse of data is allowed, which is what is happening in the case of the Helsinki's digital twin. I think it was first released in the year 2015. And one application of that digital twin that is quite interesting is the Energy Atlas. Basically, it allows you to see how much energy different buildings consume. You can also simulate the potential of solar panels if mounted on different buildings. So this kind of information is useful for property developers, for housing companies, for citizens. And of course, it's very relevant in today's context where we all have to think about the European Green Deal and how to implement climate neutrality targets as we getting closer and closer to the year 2030. So that's a network-oriented digital twin. We now going to look at the network-owned local digital twin. This is the one that has the highest level of decentralization and openness. Here you have government, which is not the sole initiator and user. It's an equal actor among other stakeholders, where you have private sector, research, academia, civil society. And because of this decentralization, it's not the government that primarily funds this digital twin initiative. The funding is split between different actors. So it's not uncommon to see private sector also chipping in to the digital twin. But with that being said, this is still very much a theoretical construct. If you like, it's a future state in the digital twin maturity model that might emerge if certain conditions become available. And there are some enablers that allow us to be sanguine and optimistic that we might witness the emergence of network-owned digital twin. For example, European Commission is about to introduce the Data Governance Act, and as part of this act, we're going to see several data spaces in critical areas of mobility, transport, and health, which would facilitate the creation of different data-related services. Also, Gaia X, I know it's experienced some problems recently, but if successful, it should lead to the creation of the European cloud with a federated cloud space where different providers, data providers, service providers can exchange their data and services and create new data-driven value propositions. So all these are interesting enablers that can facilitate the emergence of a network-owned local digital twin, but also some cities that are already at a fairly advanced state that maybe already have a network-oriented digital twin, they can transition also to this type of digital twin in the future. And we see some examples of this transition in Rotterdam, which currently has quite an advanced network-oriented digital twin. And it's not perfect. They have a lot of smart city applications. I read somewhere that have about 350 different smart city applications that they want to interconnect as part of the next version of the digital twin. And also they want to make the digital twin like a marketplace where different actors can trade in services and co-create new data-driven solutions. So not there yet in terms of being a network-owned local digital twin, but it seems like Rotterdam is moving in that direction. And then the final type that we're going to check now, it's the network-enabled local digital twin. As you can see, it's mostly used for policy purposes, but it's a part of a larger ecosystem. So think of it as a close part of an otherwise open system that government set up for its own private use. So data in this kind of digital twin is owned by the ecosystem, but the government is using it for its own private purposes. And because network enabled depends to a large extent on the ecosystem, and we don't really have true examples of network-owned digital twins yet, it's still very much a theoretical construct that might become available in the future. But just like with Rotterdam, when we were doing this research, we found some interesting developments in a Swedish city of Rebo, where the municipality is planning to create a linked Rebo data system that would interconnect different data sources and mix them with its so mix private governmental academic data sources in one linked open data ecosystem. And one use case in particular that they are interested in is the use of IoT data, most of which is privately owned, mixing it with governmental data to improve traffic management, improve traffic light systems, with the final goal of reducing congestion, reducing air pollution, making citizens happier. So just a quick recap, we looked at 4 different local digital twin types. We looked at the closed model, which is owned by the government and used mostly by the government for policymaking purposes. And an example that we briefly considered was Vienna's GeoTwin. Then we looked at Helsinki's example, which falls under the network-oriented type. Here, the government initiates the digital twin project, but it does it with the intention to make it open to the wider community to facilitate open innovation and citizen participation. This is a theoretical construct that is characterized by the highest level of decentralization and openness. It does not yet exist, but we're already seeing some interesting developments in Rotterdam that might be moving in this direction. And a network-enabled digital twin is a close part of another otherwise open system that is also a theoretical construct, but some signs of transition towards this type are emerging in the Swedish city of Rebo. And now to conclude, if you talk to people about digital twins, some of them would be eager to tell you that, yeah, definitely local digital twins or digital twins of smart cities, they can facilitate co-creation, open innovation. But really, this depends on the kind of digital twin that the city has. If you have a closed one or network-enabled local digital twin, here the benefits primarily accrue for the government. They are the primary user and the sole beneficiary of the solution, and they use it internally for policymaking purposes. So here are really not so many opportunities for collaborative governance. But digital twins that are really conducive to collaborative governance are the network-oriented or network-owned local digital twins. In Amsterdam, we looked at the example where citizens are able to provide feedback on planning applications, and in the future, they might even create a marketplace where different parties can engage in trading of different data and services and co-creating different data-driven value propositions. The Helsinki's Energy Atlas, which at the moment we classify as network-oriented digital twin, their housing companies, property developers are using the digital twin to understand how much energy the buildings consume. They are using it also to simulate the potential of different green technologies like solar panels if mounted on different buildings. So also an interesting example of a wider co-creation and open innovation with the help of digital twin. And Duet, which already has a network-oriented digital twin, and which might transition in the future to one that is fully network-owned, also has some interesting use cases. One of our target audience in this project, for example, is citizen scientists. These are the groups of people who collect a lot of useful and relevant information on traffic, for example, in their streets, on air pollution in their streets, but they don't necessarily have a nice visualization tool where they can map this data to understand maybe the problematic hotspots. So with our digital twin, they will be able to upload this data to a platform and visualize it on its own, or for example, in combination with governmental data sources to get a well-rounded view of air pollution in their city and in their neighborhood. Then finally, what a local digital twin to have or to build depends to a large extent on the existing governance framework and data governance culture. Because if you want to build a network-oriented digital twin, this will certainly create some demands and requirements, and it will not be appropriate for all cities. So what digital twin will depend to a large extent on what capacity the city has with regards to data governance and the data sharing and access arrangements. And finally, digital twins can coexist, so it's not like it's a one or the other or a zero-sum game. If you have one, you cannot have the other. This is not the case. For example, a government might decide to have one for its own purposes, a closed one to simulate some planning decisions, and it can have another one which is open to the wider ecosystem so that citizens, private sector stakeholders can also do something with the data and make the vision of collaborative governance a reality. So I hope that's all. Sorry if I took a little bit more time than was initially allocated for this presentation. And if you want to know more, you can drop us a message on digitalurbantwins.com or engage with us on Twitter. And then when we have a Q&A, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So thanks for your attention. I will stop sharing now, Germana.
Yes, thank you, Pavel. Thanks a lot for your presentation. The impression that I received from your presentation, you managed to collect a huge sample of initiatives, having more than 20 local digital twins across the EU. So it's a very huge sample. And also, I think that the digital twin initiative at the end, even if you, of course, detail the fact that it's depending on the type of the digital twins, but it's still a way to facilitate the co-creation and stakeholder engagement. So it is a valuable way of impacting on co-creation and definitely a mean to deepen in the next future. I also, it's impressive the fact that the digital twins can open up to different intersections, so different integration and simulation, and particularly the fact about the autonomous fleet to be controlled and checked with the digital twins. That is, I would say, the next year's challenge is to put it in the real world and make it effective. So I think that all these techniques will help us to really improve not only the co-creation, but the way we live. So thanks a lot, Pavel. I would like now to present Mr. Jerónimo Arenas Garcia. Jerónimo, while you put on your presentation, I will present you. Mr. Jerónimo Arenas Garcia is Associate Professor at Universidad Carlos III. He has carried out stays at universities such as UCLA, DTU, and University of São Paulo. His research focuses on artificial intelligence, where he has co-authored around 100 conferences and journal publications. Currently, he is technical manager of the Horizon 2020 Intelcom project. So, Jerónimo, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Germana. Can you see my presentation, all of you?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone attending the presentation. As Germana said, I'm going to present the basics of the Intelcom platform. And in order to contextualize a little bit about what is the purpose of the platform, its general objective, we are aiming at developing a platform that will be useful for providing evidence-based data, evidence-based information, which is powered by artificial intelligence and natural language processing, with the scope of providing evidence which boosts the policy-making cycle in the STI domain in all of its phases, from agenda setting, policy formulation, policy adoption, implementation, and evaluation as well. As such, and this is something that I want to make clear, the main user of the Intelcom platform is going to be policymakers, but there are some components here that we envision and we will provide so that we can also allow policymakers to gather evidence regarding how citizens, how academia and industry envision what are their concerns, their priorities with respect to STI as well. And I will try during my presentation to describe both the platform as a whole and focus specifically a little bit more on these components which are targeted towards citizens and stakeholders in general. Okay, to be more specific about the different objectives which align also to the different developments of the platform. The first one will be to understand the challenges of STI policymaking and to provide a framework including which is what are the main concerns, the main questions that for which we can provide some solutions, some indicators, some measurements which are based on the exploitation of open data. Okay, and here this is first point where we were able to interact with the stakeholders through a series of consultation workshops. I will say a little bit more about that in a minute. The second objective will be to create a data space of STI-related data sources. We plan to include mostly open data sources here. Then the third objective will be the development of different tools powered by artificial intelligence and natural language processing. And among all available possibilities here, we focus on those that learn from unstructured text. Here we include standard natural language processing pipelines, classification, topic extraction, and graph analysis as well. Then all these data sources and the information that we extract with artificial intelligence tools will be put together in the platform, in the Intelcom platform, and in order to make the experience easy for the final users, here we will carry out a series of co-creation processes via 3 living labs that we also include in different domains inside the project. And a final objective will be to deploy the platform. We want it to run in parallel computing environments, in cloud computings. And this is important because some of the datasets that we envisioned will be included in the platform are really huge. I mean, we want to analyze text for over hundreds of millions of documents, and for that we need really to parallelize and to go big data for this. Well, I'm not gonna give you the full description of the services, of course, but I just want to emphasize what are the components, the different tools that will be part of this Intelcom platform, and what are the different target users for them. The first one will be an interactive model trainer. So rather than having everything 100% automatic, we envision a human in the loop approach, where domain experts are taken into account in order to validate and to perfectionate the artificial intelligence models that we built. Then we have two tools which are targeted to the public administration, which are actually the core of the Intelcom platform, which are the STI viewer, which is where we aim to provide all these measurements, all this information, which is relevant for the agenda setting, for the evaluation phases, and the rest of phases of the policymaking process. We also plan to develop a series of tools for evaluation of proposals, which will build on the same kind of semantic tools that we use to build the SDA viewer. And finally, and this is the component which is addressed to stakeholders, to citizens and academia and industry, we will have an SDI policy participation portal, which actually has a double purpose. On the one hand, we propose a system that can offer some information, kind of transparency of what the government, the administration is doing with the taxes in the field of science and technology, but also so that we can gather some information about stakeholder concerns that we can feed back to the policymakers through both the interactive model trainer and the STI viewer. Okay, so regarding this citizen viewer, which I commented, which is the main component that will be available for citizens, this is still ongoing work, and we don't plan, I mean, we are still finishing our first year of the project, and all this engagement with citizens is mostly foreseen to start by mid 2022 or even beginning of 2023. So the goal of this component is to allow the stakeholders, I'm focusing here on citizens, but this is very similar to what academia and the industry will also be able to use. So we want to provide them with a tool which allows an exploratory analysis of the datasets that we have. And this includes both the metadata that we have in these datasets, but also the outputs of these artificial intelligence models that we have developed. So this means, for instance, that to give you an idea of what one component could be, in a past project, we developed a component that was learning from job offers data and was detecting whether there was a gender-aware component in that job offer or not. So all this kind of new information, of enriched information that we can infer using the different artificial intelligence pipelines, the different artificial intelligence models that we envision inside Intelcom, this will be visible through this citizen viewer and actually connected to the rest of metadata. So then, using the tool, we can provide citizens a general panorama of the STI field, evolution over time, also allow comparisons of at the national, regional, or institutional level. So here you have in the slide a number of questions, kind of questions that we can answer with the tool, but as I said, it's an exploratory tool. So the user can filter according to different criteria and will be able to actually answer other kind of questions according to their interests. So as I said, the purpose of this tool is twice. One of them is just this exploratory analysis, kind of transparency, providing information to the citizen. The other one is data gathering that we aim to do also following two different approaches. One will be based on the very interaction of the user with the platform. We can, in this way, know what are their concerns, which ideas get more popular when navigating over the tool. And then we actually also plan to include a participation mailbox so that the citizen can simply provide their concerns, their interests, or any comments. And all this, which is going to be in the form of raw text, is going to be integrated into a new data set that will be analyzed and included and put back in service towards the policymakers. So that apart from all the data sets that were originally there in the Intercom platform, they will also have a newly created data set that brings the citizen perspective into the platform. Regarding the methodology, there are, so to say, two main components, methodological components here. The first one will be the identification of the kind of information that we will put in place in the platform. And this is essentially what we have already done in the project. So as I said at the beginning of my presentation, we carried out a number of consultation workshops with stakeholders, and a result of this was a huge number of questions that were actually domain agnostic. And then we went through all these questions and prioritized them according to different criteria, whether they were in the scope of the project, whether we could power them with artificial intelligence components, whether we had sufficient data, things like this. And the output of the process was the selection of different data sets, selection of taxonomies, which can be relevant for the policymakers, and also the identification of different AI components that we need to include in order to enrich the data sets. Then the second part of the methodology is the co-creation of the tools themselves, not just the information we provide, but the tools. And for this, we will carry out a series of living labs. As I said, the platform is in principle domain agnostic, but we will validate the approach by implementing solutions in the domain of three different living labs in artificial intelligence, climate change, blue economy, and the health domain, particularly in cancer. So through the living labs, we will incorporate two different kinds of information into the platform. One of them is the expert's point of view, because as I said, the construction of the artificial intelligence models themselves will follow a human in the loop approach. So the domain expert's point of view will be incorporated into the models. And then the second component is has the purpose of building the right visualization tools so that we offer the information to the user in a format which is convenient for them. And in order to get this, we envision we will follow an agile methodology. So we will have incremental versions of the different components in the Intercom platform every 3 months, and the users will get involved for the user requirements at all these sprints for developing the different tools. Okay, so I'm not gonna go, I mean, this kind of a recap of the different co-creation processes that we will implement in these living labs. With respect to the model trainer, as I have said, we will have experts curating and annotating the models that we build using artificial intelligence, evaluating them as well. Then with respect to the data lake, we will also allow users to prioritize what are the different data sources that should make it into the data lake or the data space of Intelcom, because they will, of course, have a strong correlation with the kind of information they will be able to explore. And then with respect to the final user, we will have a co-creation of the visualization tools, a co-creation of some tools, which, I mean, it's not just a visualization component, but also how we measure similarity, how we explore graphs and use that information in order to measure impact, things like this. And finally, we have the data gathering process for enriching the platform with the concerns to allow the participation, the point of view of the stakeholders to get into the Intelcom. Okay, so in order to conclude, Intelcom will develop a platform for SDI policy making based using evidence built from data along the whole cycle of SDI policy making. It will be powered by artificial intelligence and specifically on the use of unstructured text analysis using last generation of natural language processing tools. We will carry out a co-creation both when training the models following a human-in-the-loop approach, and also co-creation of the platform itself with an agile methodology for software development. And we will plan to do that starting now in January by implementing 3 different living labs. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation, Germana.
Thank you, Geronimo. Thanks a lot. I can see that from your point of view, the co-creation started at the previous stage. So started from the tool that will facilitate the implementation of the policies. And this co-creation also impacted not only the tools, but also how the tools can be visualized and easily evaluate and recognized by the stakeholders. So it's a different approach of the co-creation. Also valuable the fact that, 160 questions are a lot. So you did a lot of research in your project. Again, thank you for your presentation. And this open up for, I would say, a couple of questions for the panel that I would like to open up. I have a question for Fabio, for example, Mr. Perossini. Fabio, what is the benefit of collaboration, co-creation and consultation with citizens and stakeholders for evidence-based policy making? What's your opinion on that?
Well, my opinion is that the co-creation and collaboration with citizens gave them a great opportunity to go toward a new democratic process. And this is something that is extremely valuable in this period where we have, let's say, some political fog in terms of direction. And so having citizens more aware of their capacity and also they are able to see their objective to be practically addressed in the co-creation of a new policy. To me, it's a unique opportunity.
And did you encounter any particular challenge when facilitating this collaboration with citizens and stakeholders?
Yes, we face, there are really different type of attitudes from citizens in my experience. You could have people who are aiming to participate, so they are in a way self-motivated because of their culture, because of their attitude, because they are socially engaged, so they would like to, for instance, to address disadvantaged people, or there are very huge associations making a great job with people. But on the other hand, you have, let's say, I think citizens who are more oriented to have independent action in place, and they are not so motivated to be part of the community, and this is a big lack. And it is not only due, as we expected, to let's say a cultural level in terms of traditional culture, but often you can find people who are very let's say high level in terms of culture, but they are not so open to engagement and to have a relationship and confrontation, discussion with other people.
So it's still depending on human attitude and how the humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not a matter of technology. It's not a matter, and I think what we can do is really to be open, to be open and to try to adapt ourselves to what is needed from the citizen point of view. This is to me, this is the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you for your answers. Pavel, I would like to ask you something. I mean, since you presented us a very huge experience of initiatives, digital twins at different level, why do you think the work you are doing in your project in the local communities is important for Europe at the large, so the whole of the European countries?
I briefly referred to European Green Deal in my presentation, and it's a massive legislative package that's going to change how we travel, how we live, go about our daily activities, even perhaps what we eat. But it's formulated at EU level, but you will hear from Frans Timmermans and other high-level policymakers that Green Deal must be local. This means that cities, together with citizens and other local stakeholders, must shape the Green Deal in areas that fall under their competencies. And local digital twins, especially open ones, network-oriented ones, they allow cities to bring together the entire urban value chain in, first of all, understanding what the current situation with, for example, with regards to air pollution, with regards to air quality, with regards to noise, because these are all the things that are interrelated. And digital twins, they allow you to see the trades-off between these different policy domains, so you can fine-tune and define the best strategy that allows you to achieve climate neutrality by 2030 and then by 2050, because by 2030 we already are going to see 100 climate neutral cities in Europe. So I think what we're doing now in Juliet, we will definitely be sharing a lot of useful lessons learned and providing feedback to other cities so that they can decide for themselves as if a local digital twin is something that they need, and then which one to build based on the competences that the city has, based on the needs that the citizens have. So I think definitely local digital twins, although they themselves cannot reduce climate change, but they can help policymakers and others to see what policies are performing, how they are performing, whether they're underperforming, and understand the requirements for better strategies. So I think this is why I think the work we're doing in GIET is important.
Absolutely, Pavel. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. A more technical question, I would say, for Geronimo. Why do you consider it is important to follow a user-in-the-loop approach when training artificial intelligence models instead of going fully automatic?
Yes, I will be very brief here. I think we have 30 seconds before we shut down automatically. Well, I will say there are two reasons: higher quality of the models, and also they get more aligned to the final user experience. And we think that in that way, we can favor adoption of the platform. I could say a bit more, but I don't have time for that.